Hello, America JOC, here with your Ranting Politics headline updates, where we are diving into today's most explosive political stories that you need to know about. Coming up, we're diving into the latest Epstein Files drama that's got the FBI squirming. Attorney General Pam Bondi is turning up the heat on FBI Director Kash Patel over thousands of documents that somehow didn't make it to her desk. Funny how that happens, right? Then we'll get into a rather spicy Oval Office meeting between our VP JD Vance and British PM Keir Starmer. Let's just say the special relationship got a little less special when they started talking about free speech. And finally, Mexico's finally playing ball with a massive cartel roundup, shipping dozens of their most notorious drug lords our way, including the infamous Rafael Caro Quintero. The timing? Well, let's just say Trump's tariff threats might have something to do with it. Stick around, because this is the kind of news you won't want to miss. As always, we're cutting through the noise to bring you the stories that actually matter, without the usual partisan nonsense. Well, folks, this Epstein saga just keeps getting more interesting by the day. Attorney General Pam Bondi just dropped a bombshell, sending what I can only describe as a scorching letter to FBI Director Kash Patel. According to Fox News, Bondi's office had previously requested the complete Epstein case files, but apparently only received about 200 pages. Now, that might sound like a lot until you consider what happened next. Turns out there are thousands more pages sitting in the FBI's New York field office that nobody bothered to mention. I mean thousands. And Bondi's not playing around anymore. She's given the FBI until 8 a.m. tomorrow to hand over everything, and I mean everything, related to Epstein and his clients. That includes all records, documents, audio, video recordings, the whole 9 yards. Now, Director Patel, who's still pretty fresh in his role, has come out swinging in response. He took to X, formerly Twitter, promising a new era at the FBI. No cover-ups, no missing documents, no stones left unturned. Pretty bold statement if you ask me. He's even promised that anyone from the Bureau, past or present, who tries to undermine this transparency effort will be swiftly pursued. But here's the kicker. Bondi's office isn't just asking nicely. They've launched an internal investigation and demanded that Patel propose some personnel action within 2 weeks. Of course, they're still promising to protect victims' privacy with appropriate redactions, but it's clear the days of selective disclosure might be coming to an end. I've got to say, watching this unfold is like seeing a decades-old game of hide and seek finally coming to an end. And something tells me we haven't heard the last of this story. Stay tuned, because this could get really interesting really fast. In what can only be described as an awkward moment in the special relationship between the US and UK, Vice President JD Vance didn't pull any punches during his Oval Office meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. If you thought diplomatic meetings were all handshakes and polite small talk, well, this one definitely broke the mold. Let me paint you the scene from this New York Post report. Vance, fresh from stirring up controversy at the Munich Security Conference, doubled down on his criticism of European free speech restrictions. He didn't just mention it in passing, he made it a centerpiece of the conversation, pointing out that these restrictions aren't just a British problem, they're becoming an American one too, especially when it comes to our tech companies. Now Starmer, sitting just a few feet away, wasn't about to let that slide. He jumped in to defend his country's speech codes, insisting that the UK has had free speech for a very, very long time. But here's where it gets interesting. Vance had come prepared with specific examples, including the case of a British Army veteran who was fined over $11,000 for praying outside an abortion clinic. And folks, this wasn't just some diplomatic sparring match. This meeting highlighted a growing tension between American and European approaches to free speech. Vance has been particularly vocal about what he calls the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values. The whole exchange really underscores a broader question we're facing. How do we maintain our closest international relationships while standing firm on our fundamental values? It's a delicate balance. And based on this meeting, it's clear that even our closest allies aren't immune from some frank discussions about these differences. I've got to say, seeing a vice president directly challenge a British PM on free speech issues right there in the Oval Office, That's not something you see every day. But then again, these aren't exactly ordinary times we're living in. In what might be the biggest shakeup in cartel leadership we've seen in years, Mexico has just handed over 29 high-level cartel leaders to the United States. But this isn't just any routine prisoner transfer. We're talking about some of the most notorious names in the drug trade, including Rafael Caro Quintero, a figure straight out of the darkest chapters of DEA history. Let's break this down for you. Caro Quintero isn't just another cartel boss. He's the man behind the brutal 1985 kidnapping and murder of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena. This is the same guy who walked free in 2013 after serving 28 years, only to allegedly jump right back into the drug trade. Talk about not learning your lesson. But it's not just Quintero making the trip north. The founders of Los Zetas, Miguel and Omar Morales, better known in cartel circles as Z40 and Z42, are also part of this unprecedented transfer. And let me tell you, when we're talking about Los Zetas, we're talking about some of the most violent players in the Mexican drug war. Now, this massive extradition didn't just happen out of the blue. According to Fox News, this comes as President Trump's tariff deadline looms over Mexico. The administration has been pushing hard for Mexico to crack down on cartels and fentanyl trafficking, and it looks like Mexico's finally responding with some serious action. The timing here is interesting too. This all went down just as Mexican officials were meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington. It's pretty clear Mexico's sending a message that they're ready to play ball with U.S. demands on security cooperation, a dramatic shift from their previous stance under López Obrador, who had basically put DEA cooperation on ice. For the Camarena family, Quintero's extradition might finally bring some closure to a case that's haunted American law enforcement for nearly 4 decades. And for the rest of us, it's a clear signal that the landscape of U.S.-Mexico cooperation on drug enforcement is changing dramatically. Whether this marks a turning point in the war on cartels, well, that's something we'll have to wait and see. And that wraps up today's explosive headlines here on Ranting Politics. What a news day, folks. From the FBI facing tough questions about those Epstein Files, to Vice President Vance getting into it with the British PM over free speech, and that massive cartel roundup in Mexico. The political landscape just keeps getting more interesting by the day. Before we close out, let me remind you that this is just a slice of what we do here at Ranting Politics. We're committed to bringing you the unvarnished truth without the partisan nonsense that's clogging up your feed these days. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you the facts you need to think for yourself. Want to stay in the loop? Follow us on X at RantingRP for real-time updates and behind-the-scenes takes. You can catch full episodes of our show on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And for deep dives into all our stories, head over to rantingpolitics.com. This is JOC, signing off, and thank you, our loyal listeners, for choosing Ranting Politics headline updates. We'll be back soon with the updates you need to navigate these interesting times. Until then, stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, stay free.